Hey, welcome back. Today we have a great guest on, Jeff Call. He's the co-founder of Just Ingredients. I think you're going to find this one really interesting. Enjoy. Are you a CrossFit guy?
Not a CrossFit guy, just the gym.
Normal gym?
Just normal gym.
Where do you go?
Right now I go to Vasa.
Okay.
Just opened up by my house, so
Oh, that's really nice.
like barely opened.
That's convenient. Oh, down in Lehigh.
Lehigh, yeah.
Okay. Are you still, you're not in the same neighborhood as my brother anymore, right, Dave Brockbank?
I mean, we were never in the same neighborhood, but I'm still in my same home. So he's across the street from where I live.
Okay.
His old house.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that part of the, it's
Yeah.
like the most beautiful, pleasant place.
It's a
Lehigh.
nice place to
I
live.
love it, yeah.
Awesome.
Small world.
Well, we're here today with Jeff Call of Just Ingredients,
Yes,
but he's not the only one that gets credit for it. He has an amazing wife, Carolyn.
I do. She gets all the credit, to be honest with you. So.
Well, as she probably should.
She should.
No.
She should. She deserves it.
Yeah. Well, it's really fun to have you on this podcast with us today, Jeff. And
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Retail War Games, right, Jeremy?
That's right. Retail War Games, getting the top CEOs and founders, going through each state, starting in Utah. Got our first 50. And obviously, Just Ingredients is a major one. I was actually chatting with Jeff yesterday at his corporate office, and the growth and everything else, it's pretty unbelievable. Have you guys always been, you and your family, have you and Carolyn always been into really healthy foods? And where did this all start?
Yeah, so not always, right? I mean, we all grew up kind of just eating the same thing as everybody else, right? I had ding dongs and Twinkies for
the
snacks.
80s, right?
Right, everybody ate that way, right?
The best.
And we continued to eat that way as we were first married and raising our children. And ultimately, where the health journey began was with Carlin. After the birth of our third child, she kind of suffered severe depression. And from there, she kind of went down this health journey of how do I heal my body so that I don't feel I want to feel the way that I did before having these children, before going through all the different things that she was going through. So she started working with a number of different doctors trying to figure out how do I get my body back to the way it was before. And ultimately, that was the beginning of understanding that what we put in and on our body makes a difference and makes us feel different, makes us, whether our bodies can heal themselves or not. It's a big difference in what we do.
That's kind of, we were talking a little bit about that herniated disc, and once you hit 40, like it feels like there's just two tracks you can go on. It's either I'm just gonna do what I'm doing in my 30s, and now I'm really gonna pay for it, or it's okay. Let's try to get back on track.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way. It was like I'd been behind a computer for the last 15 years, and it was like, you know what, this is not feeling good. I've got to make sure that I prioritize this every day. And, after my back issues, got better, you felt like you had almost like a second win and a second chance. It's it was a game changer.
Yeah. I've referred to it with friends and family as my intermediate resurrection, getting a brand new back. And just it feels remarkable.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, Jeff, that you and Carlin, as you help people through your products, you're helping them experience or touch base with this idea of new life often.
Yeah.
And that it actually works and improves their lives when they stick to these routines. Can you speak a little bit to that? How much of this is touching the vision of people's hearts also is part of what you do?
Sure, yeah, and it's a really important part. I saw it firsthand with the kind of the journey that my wife went on, and I saw the difference of what she was prior to her journey and where she is currently, and it's night and day, right? So I've experienced that firsthand, and that was what my wife wanted to do, is kind of teach people, hey, you can make a difference and change things in your lives, and you can start small, and little steps make big differences, right? So that's kind of where she started, and I see this on a regular basis, and this is the part I love about my job the most. We go to situations where we're like an expo or a show or something where the public has an opportunity to come and talk with Carlin or give her a hug or whatever. And I'll just use it as an example. We had a grand opening at our storefront. We just opened it last fall, but we did a grand opening just last month. And honestly, we were talking about it beforehand, saying, we're kind of we're off the beaten path a little bit, right? It's a destination, you have to get there. And an hour before we opened, the line was down the sidewalk, 100 people long, right? That was an hour before we opened. Once we opened, the line was all the way wrapped around the two buildings. the cars were to come into the parking lot were all the way down to the freeway off ramp.
Oh, no way.
It took forever for
incredible.
people to get in.
No way.
And this is what my point is it's not necessarily the products that they love. They do love that, but they love what's come from using the products, from listening to the things that my wife has been teaching. And so they want to come and they want to give her a hug and they want to tell their story.
Yeah.
And they all have a story. And the story is, because of you and the changes I made in my life, I now am pregnant. I've not been able to get pregnant for
No way.
10 years, right? Or because of you, I'm now off my medications. I'm no longer taking antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications. Or because of you and what I've taught, I'm no longer taking my type 2 diabetic medication. Like, these are the things that were just small changes make a big difference. And what I love to see is these people literally crying as they hug my wife, telling her, thank you so much for changing my life.
Oh my gosh.
And all she's doing is just helping them to learn and to educate themselves.
It's so inspiring.
It is.
What's really cool, I'm noticing a lot in the last years of life is kind of what I like to call this general underground awakening. I think we're asking ourselves more intelligent questions. And we're asking more questions about the experience of life. Like, why do I do whatever I do in a given day?
Yeah.
And what things could I do that would improve a given day, and therefore the
That's right.
overall experience of my life, the experience I have with my family, with my loved ones, with my neighbors, the experiences I have at work. And I think we're also seeing, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this, but I think we're also seeing this kind of thought revolution translate and transfer into our businesses and the products we're building. To me, at least, it seems as though you and Carlin have been wide awake to that reality and what you've built with Just Ingredients and the culture around it and people's lifestyles, and changing just your comments. But would you agree with that? Do you start to feel this a bit more, that people are a bit more awake, asking the right questions, and I would call it maybe even a little deeper interest in self and those around them for their decisions and the things they take into their body, onto their body, what they do with others?
Well, specialty natural grocery has been, for the last 10 years, consistently the fastest growing channel out of the 117 channels. And, particularly in specialty grocery, because people are so educated in it. And you've seen actually specialty grocery starting to bleed into traditional grocery. Things that you never would have thought that you could actually purchase in a traditional grocery store, like products like Burt's Bees that kind of made the entrance, and a lot of brands have followed. But I think the coolest thing about this journey is I feel like you guys did it the right way. A lot of times we have brands that come to us and they've just created a product, and they just created a product on Kickstarter and Indiegogo and raised some money, and they want to immediately launch into retail. And retail is not built that way. You have to have the awareness, you have to be the thought leader, you have to have a following, so that when your products are placed on shelf, you actually have the pull. And so what Just Ingredients did right is that, and I want to kind of hear more on that story of Carlin, but it sounded like she became the expert in the field first, and then the thought leader, and then the followers came, and then eventually the brand came, and now also, and then the retail, right? That's like the right order of operations.
Yeah, so it started when she, after she kind of went through her health journey, she noticed that all these people around her, family, friends, neighbors, whatever it was, there were so many people around, and they're all suffering from something: migraines, autoimmune issues, anxiety, depression, so many issues going on. And she just wanted to tell people, hey, what you eat and put on your body does make a difference, and I kind of want to help you with that. But people, especially people who know you, they don't want to listen, right? And especially the
hardest to convince the closest ones.
The closest to you are the last ones to listen, right?
For sure.
So she wanted to create a platform on social media where she could just kind of share what she's learned, and then people could come and go as they please, right? I'm not going to be invasive. I'm not going to shove my information down your throat. I'm just going to put it out there, and if you want to go see it, you can see it.
Wow.
And so she put that out there. She just created, Just Ingredients. On Instagram, and just started putting out there, hey, these are some simple swaps that you can make when you go to the grocery store. Because at the time, there were a lot of people out there saying, hey, don't eat this. It's got high fructose corn syrup in it.
Yeah.
Don't eat this. It's got dyes. Don't eat this. It's got artificial sweeteners. But nobody was giving, well, what should you eat? And so she just came in with, hey, instead of eating this, grab this instead. And the best example for that is just ketchup, right? Standard ketchup has high fructose corn syrup in it. It doesn't need it. The same company makes the one with high fructose corn syrup, makes it without high fructose corn
No
syrup.
way.
And it sits right on the shelf next to it, and it's just called like Simply Ketchup or something like that.
probably tastes the same.
And it tastes exactly the same, and the cost is basically the same.
No way.
So all she did was just kind of say, hey, if you look
Yeah.
a little closer, you're going to find the better alternative, and it's usually sitting right next to it. So instead of this, try this. And that was kind of where it began.
There's a lot of authenticity. I watched, I don't know if it was an Instagram of hers yesterday or the day before.
Mm-hmm.
She's either like a Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. And what I found that was actually amazing about it, which really got my attention, is she was promoting other people's brands too, right? This is a good brand. It's not just ours.
Yeah.
But I think that it not always pushing your own products, but just pushing the total well-being of everybody is how you get authenticity.
Yeah.
That's how she gets her followers.
Yeah.
It's a smart move, and it's very authentic.
I agree with that. I think the best, a lot of the time, that's simply about community building.
Yeah.
What's remarkable about a real community builder is you can tell that they care about people. They're not in it for themselves.
Yeah, it's true.
Although they figure out, obviously, like everybody should take care of themselves. We should have some self-interest, but it's clear that you and Carlin have really cared about the community first.
Yeah.
And then as she cared, what's really interesting about this too is it's a great lesson for all of us on a daily basis. If we're paying enough attention to what's going on around us, especially in the decisions and words being made or taken by people in a given day, we'll be able to begin to feel and see and understand what's needed. If we're kind of quiet about it to some degree and we're just kind of listening,
Oh, yeah.
and you guys do a really good job at this. And so as I've observed the story, it seems as though she's done this nearly perfectly.
Yeah.
Where she recognized, okay, here's these interests in my life, how I can improve my life. Oh my gosh, it's helping. I want to share that with someone. And then she saw the gaps in places where, hey, here's another added place where we can help change and move the curve, if you will. And then you have this incredible company now with
Yeah.
remarkable products, which, to your points earlier, you have this amazingly, I would even call it an evangelic customer base.
That's right.
Right? They talk about it because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
love it, because it makes a big difference, which, I mean, I part of me is so curious, like how much of that, when you talk about business strategy, it's obvious you understand that. How much, I don't know, there's no perfect answer, obviously. It's pretty hard to answer this question, but to some degree, I'm very curious. How much of that was deliberate and well thought out? How often did you stop and say, this is what works, this is how we apply the strategy, versus it just became natural, and it was natural to you and Carlin?
Yeah, to be honest, it was mostly just came natural, right? There wasn't a lot of strategy in creating Just Ingredients, the brand, right? It was Just Ingredients, the education platform. And I still tell people, look, our number one goal as a company is to educate. We're an education company. Our products help us educate, but is not the primary. It's become an important part of it. But the more that we can create products, the more we get customers on board, the more that we can spread the message of our education that we're trying to promote, which is our mission statement is to help people live a happier, healthier life. Right? That's what we want. We want people to just be happier and healthier, and that's the whole mission. So, yeah, go ahead.
You know what? I'm not familiar with many brands that have done the social reach better than you guys. I'd love to hear from you, from your perspective, of what was that like? What was the timeline like, where you went from 50 followers to 1,000?
Yeah.
And take us down that journey.
Yeah, so about...
And it was exponential.
You know, it was, and when it did take off, it took off. But I think for the first year, so about 5.5 years ago is when she first started posting, right? And
That's like a blip. That like barely happened.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a year and a half before COVID.
Yep. No, that's it. And
Especially, you know, when you compare it to so many other companies that have tried so hard for so many
Oh,
years.
yeah, I know.
yeah. So anyway, she started with about 2,000 followers. Like it kind of just, grew to 2,000 followers and kind of stayed there 6 months to a year. no reason that it didn't grow. It's just that's who followed, right? And then for whatever reason, and I'm not sure if we actually know the reason. I know Carlin she works harder than anybody I know. And so she'll figure something out. She figured out the algorithm. She figured out some of the things that you can do that will help engagement and those kind of things. And just through her hard work and her determination, where most people would give up, she just continued and persevered. And I remember one day it went from 2,000 to like 4,000. And we're like, holy cow,
What
it just
on
doubled
earth?
in like one day.
No way.
And we're like, what happened? And then it just kind of started going viral from there. Within a month, it was at 10,000 followers.
Holy cow.
And then like 3 months later, it was like 100,000 followers. And it just kept exponentially growing. And now she's sitting at about 1.1 million followers.
Unbelievable.
And, you start slowing down at some point, right? But until we hit about 300, 400, 500,000, it was just phenomenal growth, right? And then it was steady after that, but it was always that first, surge of growth was, we didn't really know what to do with it. It was just, what do we do now that we have all these people? If you think about it, every time she makes a post, more people will watch that. And this was 5 years ago, right? More people would watch that than sit at Cougar Stadium or whatever, right? Like you have that much
unbelievable.
of a captive audience.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you do with that?
Well, what's interesting about it is because of the topic that you're actually talking about, every one of those is potential customers. And you can't say that for a lot of brands.
Yeah.
A lot of them are just following you because of content.
Right.
But they're following you because of education, because they actually want to purchase the product. So,
Sometimes,
it's a lot more valuable per viewer than it is typically for other brands.
Yeah, no, it is. And we look at that as an opportunity. We're continually trying to grow our awareness, and whether it's from products or from social media standpoint, right? We're wanting to continue to grow that because we want to reach more people, and we want to be able to get that message out. And yes, we do look at that and say, okay, yeah, each one of them is a potential customer. But the way we look at it more, and this is just a mindset because it's the same thing. But our mindset is I want to get customers who I can then bring into our social media and our education. If they love our products, they're going to find us, and then they're going to use that as a way to educate themselves.
That's right.
As opposed to saying, hey, I want to get more people onto social media so we can sell more products.
Yep.
We think that they work hand in hand because, we feel like we create a really good product, and people who don't know who Just Ingredients is on social media fall in love with our products just because of how good they are.
So you'd sold at one point tips of products
did.
to replace.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we started putting together, and Carlin was like, I've got all this information, and people are asking, how can I get it? And Instagram allows you to create some pages and things like that where you can go find information that's been shared. But we thought it would be really easy just to put some digital downloads available on our website. So we built a website, and we put these digital downloads, and they were basically, a couple of them were like top 10 items I would switch at the grocery store. Or we had like the baby care one. We had one that was for outdoor sunscreens. Like it was all these themes, right? We just sold them for a couple bucks on our website just to kind of get that information out and pay for the time of putting that together. And what we found was the demand was tremendous just for these digital downloads. And we realized, wow, we have all these people, again, a captive audience who is very interested in becoming healthier. And yet there's so many holes in the marketplace for products that we decided let's start making some products of our own to kind of fill those needs.
Yeah.
And our customers have really reacted to that.
So for listeners, Jeff,
Yeah.
when did that start? When did you start doing these tips?
So that was March of 2019.
Okay.
And then when we saw that come in, we used those revenues to create our first products, which was the deodorant and a face serum. And we launched that in November of 2019.
What was COVID like for you during that time? I mean, did it affect your brand as much as it did other brands? I know that you obviously have, inventory and stuff, but you're also very heavy education based. Mm-hmm. I mean, what was kind of like the day-to-day operations? How long did it stall you? What was your growth, during that period?
Yeah, so from a company standpoint, from social media and product demand, it actually, I would say, it helped our business. People were home. They were doing nothing but scrolling social media, looking for ways to be healthier.
Yeah.
Right? This actually was a time where people cared about their health the most.
Yeah.
And so they were out there looking for information to educate themselves. And so we actually grew phenomenally as a social media platform. but our products also grew as well because people were looking for ways to increase their health. And so from a standpoint of products, it was actually a boon in helping us. That's when we launched with protein, right as we came out of COVID. During COVID, we created our protein product, and then we launched it right out of COVID. The biggest challenge with COVID was supply chain, and that's where we fought the most because the demand was up, but the supply chain was down. So we had to really go out and source things from different areas, which ultimately helped us in the long run because we created a much more robust supply chain system.
Very interesting. Now you're focusing on another revenue stream, which is you're looking into smart retail that
Right.
is, that are good fits. Who do you feel like are some of your ideal customers? Kind of like your dream customers. We're talking to Sterling yesterday at JoJo's, and he was saying, I always wanted to get into Costco. And now he's nationwide into Costco.
Sure.
So who do you feel like is the best fit for you and kind of your dream scenario?
Yeah, our dream scenario really is to find those stores. And first off, we wanted in Utah, we really wanted to be in Harmon's.
Oh, yeah.
We felt like Harmon's was very much that niche market for us. People who are a little more health conscientious.
Yep, specialty grocery,
Yep. So
knowledgeable
we
base.
really wanted to get in there, but we've created such great partners with a number of, with like Good Earth and a number of really good retailers here in Utah that was great. And we really have hit all the retail markets that we've wanted to here in Utah. So now as we're going beyond Utah, we're looking at places like Whole Foods is a perfect fit for us. And we'll actually be launching in Whole Foods this year. And other retailers like that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a
big deal.
Big deal.
Yeah.
We through the Volcanic White Glove service, we help a lot of brands, and we've helped a ton in the past, over 500. I was talking to Jeff yesterday at his office, and we started just initial outreach to retail stores on behalf of Just Ingredients. And I think in the first 2.5 weeks, there's like 80 interested retailers, which is the most we've ever had. And so it just means it's easy to sell into retail if somebody has set the brand up properly, right? But I mean, I could totally see it being a 50-50 split in the next 3 years. It's pretty crazy.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It honestly speaks volumes to the very intelligent way of growing a business in the sense of listening to the core customer, really listening and paying attention to the changes that are occurring, especially the education side, and then sharing that wealth of knowledge. Great products that do that tend to garner remarkable audiences that are incredibly loyal, and it's clear that's what your brand has done, is doing, and you're so in tune. How do you, I mean, maybe this is an obvious answer to the question, but I am also curious. Like when you and Carlin sit down with the team and think through this, there at some point there arrives this reality that, man, we've got to try and keep this up. We have to keep up this image. What do we do next? What are your thoughts on that? Like, what have your conversations been, or has it been, hey, what we do is stay in the flow? I'm just really curious as to your thought process there.
Yeah, people tell us all the time, oh, if you're a social media company, you have to strike while it's hot, right? And that's not the approach we want to take. We want to take a kind of a longer approach, but the way we look at it is how do we stay on top of things? How do we create products that we know our customers will want? And how do we utilize what we currently have in regards to what we call passionate customers, as well as passionate followers, right? So how do we utilize that in growing our brand to beyond where we're currently at? And we do talk about that a lot. And again, it comes down to, we're not really trying to just create products for the sake of creating products, right? We really listen. We have a very strong system of conversations with our followers through DMs, emails, and other ways of conversing with them. We hear what they want. We hear what's missing in the marketplace, and we hear, these are the things that we want help finding. And so we constantly look at how do we create products that are going to meet the needs of our followers, but also find those people who are not currently interested in Just Ingredients, right? How do we get them interested in buying our bag of protein versus the competitor that's sitting right next to it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the challenging. In retail, it's much, much harder because when they walk into a store and they're not familiar with Just Ingredients and what we stand for, they're going to look at it and they're going to see the brand sitting right next to them that says, hey, best tasting protein in the world, right? Or, hey, we're the cleanest on the market, or we're this and that. And if customers don't know to turn the bag over and look at the ingredients, they're
That's
not
right.
going to know the difference.
That's right.
And so we have to figure out a way to grab their attention and educate them
Yep.
on a retail shelf.
to beat the advertising game.
And that's the challenge. When
Yep.
we sit down and talk, that's the conversation we're having. How do we reach people who don't know who we are?
I'm curious. You have a very wide range of products. I don't know if you've been to his corporate office, but it's one of the most
Not yet.
aesthetically pleasing corporate offices you'll ever be to. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's really anyway. When you walk in there, you'll see just there's a men's line, women's line, and just there's a substantial amount of products that you're breaking into.
Mm-hmm.
What product do you feel like are you most excited about that you feel like, boy, we have a good step advantage over anybody else that's offering this?
Yeah. So I'm going to say two. Well,
Yeah.
gosh, I've got to say more than that. But
Let's do.
okay. So first, let me talk about when we created protein. Carla and I created protein mainly because of me. I was trying to find a protein. Yeah. Some of the better ones out there use sugar alcohols, and they don't work for me. I just can't tolerate sugar alcohol, so I needed to do something without those. So then I was drinking another organic brand, but it was plant-based, and it just tasted horrible. And I'm like, I cannot. One day I'm sitting on the island, or sitting at the island on a bench, and I said to Carla, I'm done. I cannot do another one of these drinks. They're horrible. I'm done. I'm just not. Forget protein. And she goes, you know what? Me too. Let's make our own. So we called up a friend of ours, and we started talking around and getting some information, and found a food scientist and sat down with a food scientist. And ultimately, when we said, this is what we want to do, he laughed at us. He said, yeah, nobody does it that way. We're like, yeah, I know. That's exactly the reason why we want to do it this way. Oh. And it took 6 months to come up with our first formula. It took us a year to develop vanilla bean, because it's so hard to create a good tasting product that utilizes only whole food ingredients to flavor it. If you want a vanilla flavor, we only use vanilla bean. We don't go to a flavor house and say, hey, we want it to taste like vanilla. Put in there whatever you want, whatever natural flavor you want to make it taste like vanilla. We use vanilla bean, and whatever else we can do to make it taste good, it's a whole food ingredient. So when you ask what products set us aside, I'm most excited about the protein, because I can drink the protein knowing that it's only whole food ingredients.
And when did the product drop?
So we dropped that in the summer of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. We launched at FitCon that year. So, and it was well received, and we're like, we might have something here, and it's been so well received. But from a personal standpoint, what I'm most excited about is we just launched back in November. It's a pre, post, and probiotic drink. And most drinks out there or probiotics are just probiotics. Sometimes they have a prebiotic, but none of them, very rarely do you find one with all three in it. And they all serve a different purpose in healing the gut. And I'll tell you, the ones I've started drinking the probiotic, our drink, we call it a probiotic, it's made all the difference in the world.
No way.
Yeah, it's gotten rid of all the bloating. I just feel so much better.
Is it sitting here?
It is. It's this one right here.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, we've got this one. This is our elderberry flavor. And we also have one that's... my favorite is the ginger lemonade one. It not only does it taste amazing, but it really does its job.
We've started drinking biotics in our house. We need to tap into this for sure.
You do. I will give you this bag. You can try it.
Oh, happy to. Our family loves it.
I want you to try it.
We've tried a lot of the pops and
Yes.
stuff. Our kids love them, but the mixed drinks are so simple because you can have a nice water bottle and take them. What other product? Because you said there were a couple.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk. I'm super excited about the new kind of the supplement line that we've been working with Dr. Josh Red on. We've been partnering with him and using his expertise in autoimmune and all these kind of issues that people are facing. And for example, the one I brought here today is this is our adrenal complex. Everybody is killing their adrenals. We're all running on fight or flight, right? We're all
for sure.
running on adrenaline all day long, and it's killing our adrenals. And the example that Dr. Red uses is most adrenals should look like a grape, right? But most of our adrenals look like a raisin because we're shooting our cortisol all over the place during the day, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then they never get a chance to repair. So what this does is it actually helps repair your adrenal glands to get back to a grape, and so that they work properly. So we're not constantly tired. We're not constantly not sleeping at night. All those things that come with your adrenals being overtaxed. So this will kind of help repair those.
Probably help with
I'm
your
highly interested in that too.
Yeah.
like your visceral fat and
Yep, a lot of
your
it's related to that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so we have a whole supplemental line that we're working with Dr. Red, and I think that's going to be amazing for people who are dealing with any kind of issues, especially autoimmune issues. These will help with that.
Do you mind if I shift gears for just a minute?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can always swing back.
Of course.
One thing is certain, nearly every good company, nearly every good brand that grows does so because of great founders. It's really obvious that you and Carlin are that. Take us into a day in the life in the Call family. What's the makeup of the Call family,
Sure.
first of all?
Sure. Yeah.
And then what's a day in the life of the real, like, raw, like, this is what we are, this is who we are, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And this is how we get to this level to create
Yeah.
these fantastic products on a daily basis.
Yeah, of course. We've taken the time to find that balance, but we're getting there, right? So every day is a new challenge. But so we have 6 kids. 3 of them are out of the house, and our 4th is a senior in high school who will be leaving shortly. So we'll be down to 2 next year. But yep, we're very busy with them. They're all around here. We do have one that's in the Philippines, but he'll be back in July. So and he'll be going to school locally as well. So we'll still have them all around. But ultimately, we have a very busy day, every day. And we kind of run this routine. We wake up pretty early in the morning. Carlin runs to the gym every morning, and I get up and I get the younger kids ready and off to school. Then when they're off to school, I jump out and I hit the gym, or I go play pickleball, or I go do what I want to do. And then when I get back, we both head to the office. She's probably already there because she has a little bit of a head start on me. We work our tails off at the office in the hours that we're there. We only have limited time to meet with people on our teams, and we run like crazy during the whole time there. One of us tries to be home by the time the kids get home from school, which is around 3:30, 4 o'clock. So one of us tries to be there while the other one may have meetings or something that go beyond that. Who's ever home first starts cooking dinner,
Wow.
starts getting everything ready. So we kind of share that responsibility.
It's a good system.
And then when the other one comes home, we all pitch in. We get our kids. We get everybody pitching in to do dinner as quickly as possible. We always like to cook home meals, right? So we try to do that every day. And we try to get our kids involved. And then after dinner, Carlin's back on social media that's when she actually gets to her social media part. So she works probably anywhere from another 3, maybe 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours after dinner, trying to get all the social media stuff taken care of. And during that time, I help out wherever I can that is needed. Sometimes taking kids to their events, sometimes just cleaning up dinner, sometimes going to the grocery store, all the stuff that needs to happen in a normal household. We kind of do it at that time.
So you had a successful career before you moved over to Just Ingredients.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, what was it? What was the trigger point where you're like, you know what, this is crazy, but I'm going to jump all in with this one?
You know, after we launched our beauty product, so the serum and the deodorant at a Pinners conference.
Yeah.
And it was really well received. And that was the first time I saw people coming to tell Carlin their story. And I saw the power behind what she was doing. And so we had a conversation. I was trying to do my work, plus help run Just Ingredients, my part of it, which is kind of the back end of it, you know, the supply chain and all that kind of stuff. I was trying to run that end of it. And I was kind of failing at both because I couldn't do my full-time job and Just Ingredients at the same time. And so Carlin and I came together and we said, okay, we either need to hire somebody to do my job at Just Ingredients, or I need to leave my job and come full-time. And at this point, that would have been a financial stress on us.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for me to decide to do that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it came down to the fact that I wanted to grow our business
Props to you.
versus somebody else's.
Props.
And it was hard. And
You have to be a big believer.
you do. But I knew the mission was important to her and to others, and I wanted to be part of that.
Which I think this brings up a really, really interesting question for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Is it possible to grow a highly meaningful business without taking the leap of faith, the big leap of risk? Is it truly possible?
I think you have a ceiling if you don't take that leap.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
you can only do so much. And what I found is you do both poorly, right? You've got to, there isn't a day where I'm not 100% committed to what I'm doing.
I totally agree. Yeah.
So without that 100% commitment, I'm not going to succeed at either one of them. And I'll actually end up burning out myself and failing at both opportunities. I had to do one or the other. That was me. Somebody else might be able to figure it out, but for me, I had to be all in or all out.
So here's a question for you.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way around it.
I totally agree. Me and my wife, we've been a partnership through Anthill and Volcanic and starting companies together. And it's very interesting to watch other founders that are married spouses. And it's an incredible, interesting dynamic because the conversation that we have all the time is we have to kind of check ourselves at the door. You know, and she'll say to me all the time, is this CEO Jeremy or is this husband Jeremy, right? Like, and you really have to, you have to adjust being the husband and the dad in a different format than you were earlier the day in the CEO. Talk to
Sure.
that.
Yeah, and Carlin is, there's no question, she is the CEO. And this is her business, and this is her mission and her vision, right? I'm there to help, and I'm there to support. And so knowing that that was going to be the case was also one of the things I had to decide on.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's like if I leave my job, I will be reporting to my wife
It's incredible.
as my boss, right? And I always tell people, and it's kind of a joke, but I always say that people say, how is it working with your wife? And I always say, the best part of, or the worst part of, I say the best part of my job is I get to work with my wife every day.
Yeah.
And then I say the worst part of my job is I get to work with my wife every day.
That's right.
And it is 100% true.
That is absolutely
There are days
true.
where our personalities blend so well that
Yep.
we just know what we're thinking by looking at each other these days. We'll be sitting in meetings and she'll look at me and I know exactly what she's thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten to that point. But then there are days where, it's not that great and things always come up and things always happen. And then we got to work as business people together. And that's the challenge, right?
know,
Because sometimes we're business partners.
What's fascinating about that is you think about like the chronology of world's history, and 99% of all of humanity has been husband and wife and family partnerships, selling something on the street or making something. It's not until recent where it's, okay, I'm going to go do my thing, you do something, or you stay at home. And so it's something that I think every society has had to rely on. And, it might be new to us again, but it certainly has existed for a long time.
Yeah.
It really has. Jeff, a couple tips for anyone that's trying to balance this kind of a relationship within work. What would your top 3 tips be on managing that relationship? Which, by the way, could even apply to like co-founders.
Yeah.
Because being a co-founder, whether you're married or not, whether you live in different households or not, is basically a marriage also.
Absolutely.
It's a deep relationship that's needed. So what would be your top tips on how you manage this?
Yeah. The first thing that we had to do is we had to identify who's over what and who's responsible for what. Because when we were both just crossing over all the time, without that definition, it was challenging because I thought, I had this idea, I would just run with it. And her idea was different. And we found ourselves being at odds because we weren't necessarily talking about it, but we hadn't defined who should do this and who should do that. So until we defined those things, there were some times where we kind of had some conflict there. So once we decided to define what my focus is and what hers is, then we could separate those, and there wasn't that crossover that created the contention. So I would say early on, define what your roles are and stay within your lane, because that's important. Because as a CEO, your lane is everywhere, right? But if you give people responsibility, you let them run with it until there's an issue.
That's an incredibly important tip,
Yeah.
period, for all businesses.
Yeah, for sure. And for us, when you're saying tip number 2 would be when you're done with work, you're done with work. When you're at the dinner table with your kids, so this is not with business partners, but maybe it is in other ways. But when you're creating that separation of work and life, you have to create that separation,
Yeah,
and
present.
there has to be separation, right?
Yeah.
You can't talk about work all the time. So when you're with other people, in our case, our kids, it can't just be all the time just ingredients, right? We have to talk about them, what's going on in their life. And when we go on vacation, Just Ingredients is always going to be part of it because social media requires us to be present all the time, right? And that's a whole challenge in itself. But when we are alone and the camera's not on, we have to be just the calls, and that's what we focus on.
Brilliant.
Got a question for you
Yeah.
on financing and funding. Starting a small business is not easy,
Right.
especially a product-based CBG product that you have to buy all the inventory and hold inventory and their shelf life and everything else. What are some tips and tricks and learnings that you've had that you could share with the audience of how to grow from a business that's literally started with no products to one that's doing a substantial amount?
Well, and everybody's going to find their own journey. For us, it was important to not bring on investors and to not go into debt for. Like, that was a goal of ours, and we worked really hard. So we made decisions based on that, right? We didn't want to give up any kind of control or bring somebody else on board that wasn't going to be 100% on board with our mission, because our mission may not be in line with other people. So we didn't want to have that convoluting the waters, right? So we said no outside funding. And we didn't want debt. We didn't want that burden of debt on us. And so we decided to grow responsibly.
Yeah.
We launched with those cheat sheets that created our first funding effort for our first products.
Wow.
And then we just continue to reinvest all the profits that we make off our products that we made. We would just reinvest those into new products.
That's crazy. So it's literally a partnership and not even a corporation, I
Yeah.
imagine. That is incredible.
Yeah, and it became challenging at times, right? Because sometimes your demand for a product outweighed your resources.
Yeah, that's right.
And so then you have to sit
patient.
there and say, how do we do this? And so we started coming up with ideas of how do we create higher, margins when our products are so expensive to make. So we started selling makeup cloth removers. During the pandemic, we sold bamboo masks, so that they were more comfortable and more breathable.
Oh, yeah.
So we utilized opportunities to sell products that would enhance our margins so that we could create the protein powders, right? Because those were expensive. And going from a $20 retail product to a $60 retail product is a big jump when you're talking like taking the revenues from this product to create a product that costs 3 times the amount of money to make. Well, you got to sell 3 times the amount before you can make one. So how do you do that? And so ultimately, we just found creative ways of getting that money without having to go to a bank or investors. And that's
Unbelievable.
ultimately what we did.
Do you have like a big finance background or?
No, that is it. Ultimately, we're scrappy.
Wow, interesting.
It just
really
came down
impressive.
to coming up with ways to create those funds on a quicker basis and getting it turned around faster.
In a perfect world, and we don't live in a perfect world,
Yeah.
that's how you grow great businesses.
Yeah.
Because you allow the market to tell its own story, and people respond to it. And if
Yeah.
you're intelligent and listening, you're responding back, and that's like homemade,
Yeah.
and it grows into the market. It's healthy. It's not running too fast. There aren't these really like extraneous pressures created by funding mechanisms, right? Where they're sitting on a cap table and multiple other cap tables. They've got to get a return on investment. And so, man, I think that's a wonderful lesson. Like I would say for anyone listening too, if you are a founder and running a company and you can they call it bootstrapping, but there's some bootstrapping to it.
Yeah.
But more than anything, you were making really good decisions and choices on products, and you weren't running faster than you were capable. You weren't spending more than you were capable, and you were using basic sound financial principles to self-fund.
We were trying. Yes.
I'm sure this isn't a perfect world, right?
Right.
I'd love to know some of the insider stories of the pain points.
Oh, yeah.
And how you handled those. Those would be wonderful. I mean, I think we've probably got about 5-10 more minutes to chat, but maybe a few more questions on some of those details. Like what's the scariest thing you and Carlin have experienced together as it relates to Just Ingredients? Is it family related? Is it business related? Were there certain days where you're like, we're gonna have to fold unless we do something? And how did you come up with that miracle if there was one?
Yeah. I would say the scariest part for us was during the pandemic. We were just getting started with our young company, right? We were just selling the beauty lines that we had created and just getting into protein. And what we saw in the social media environment was if you used the wrong word, and the wrong word could be anything, right? There was no definition, there was no identification of what these wrong words were. But if you used the wrong word, your post would be deleted by the platform. And in and by itself is not the worst situation, right? It's like, okay, your post was deleted. However, it got to the point where, Instagram itself said, if you get deleted, 3 posts deleted, your whole account will be deleted,
No way.
right? And again, there was no defined word. You had to, sometimes you just found out what a word you couldn't use was by getting a post deleted.
Wow.
And so you're going blind through this whole process.
It's like verbal Russian roulette.
It was
like word games, Russian word games.
we knew
right.
that there were certain words you just had to stay away from. You could not use the word immune system. You couldn't use the word medicine cabinet. You couldn't
No
use.
way. I would never would have guessed.
You couldn't use certain words, right? They were, for whatever reason, they were targeted. And if you used them, then that post was removed. From our perspective, we knew at that time that our whole business was solely reliant upon our social media platform, right? If they shut down that account, we would be basically done. And that was the scariest thing is we had, no matter how hard we worked, no matter how smart we were, no matter what we did, it was out of our control.
A little bit of luck involved.
It was, if somebody sitting behind a computer decided that word that was put in that post was not the right word, our business could be shut down.
Unbelievable.
And so that was the scariest part.
Does it work in reverse where there's certain words that you'd use that would amplify it?
I mean, sure, there's always, people can search words and things like that, but not really, only if you're utilizing something that somebody's searching for specifically, and you don't know if they are or not, right? You can hashtag something, but ultimately it's just, if you just use a word at any point of your text, the messaging, it will just shut down.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So that was challenging, not knowing if our account did get shut down on 2 occasions, and we had to fight to get it back up. And so that was the most terrifying part is we weren't at a point where if our social media were gone, we would not have survived as a company. So it was very frightening.
As you kind of started with your Instagram, did you find out eventually, well, these are better times during the day to post, or
Sure.
this is a better backdrop to use,
Yep.
or it's better to have multiple people in the shot, or how did those learnings come about, and how long did it typically?
Yeah, and this is what I credit Carlin to is she is very, very good at, well, she works harder than everybody else.
Yeah.
And she is very good at identifying what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so she will try, it's not really A/B testing, but it's ultimately that, right? She'll try a post at this time, then at this time, and at this time. She'll try it with kids, without kids, with friends, with, whatever the backdrop is, right? And all these things, there's different responses to everything. And then you start trying, okay, well, this worked at this time, but it didn't work at this time. Is it the time or is it the background? So then, and so, when you're posting so often, that you get a lot of opportunities to test.
Yeah,
right.
A lot of testing
and so,
going on.
And the interesting thing is all the social medias change their algorithm every so often, right? So what works today might not work tomorrow. So we'll be like in a groove, algorithm is figured out, we're getting great engagement. Next thing we know, tomorrow, all of a sudden there's no engagement. We're like, oh, the algorithm changed again. What do we do? And so then it's back to the drawing board and trying to figure out the new algorithm.
Are there certain platforms, social media platforms, you just feel like, no, we're not going to get involved with? It's just not quite a good fit for us.
I mean, we've never,
or haven't tried
it's
yet.
the ones where you get different kind of engagement, like X or it used to be Twitter. We were never involved in that.
Never did that one.
And Snapchat, if you want to call it a social media platform, no. But all the other ones where people spend their time
YouTube,
scrolling,
Facebook.
all of those are pertinent, right? Yeah. Today, the biggest trend is TikTok, and that's a whole different beast. It's
are you
really,
guys doing
really
TikTok?
hard. We are, and it's really hard because it's a whole different algorithm, and it's a whole different
demographic.
And what people are on there for is different than what they are on for Instagram for.
Absolutely.
Right? And so trying to figure that out, it's been a challenge.
Have you guys found good success on Pinterest?
Yeah, we actually do pretty well on Pinterest.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good place for us. We don't spend a lot of time on there, but we do a little bit, and it's a good marketplace for us.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've had an incredible conversation. I'm very grateful that you'd come on And Carlin and your journey, Jeff, has been unbelievable. We're excited to kind of watch you as you progress, both with direct-to-consumer and retail, wherever you choose to go. But thanks
Yeah,
for coming
appreciate
on.
that.
We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I agree. You and Carlin are remarkable examples of a Utah-founded company and doing it in some ways the Utah way with
Yeah.
grit and intelligence, and you just went after it. And congratulations on the success.
Thank
We
you.
hope it keeps going.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. And thank you for having me on. Of
course.
It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to working with you, Jeremy.
Yeah, you bet.
And
Of course.
being part of Silicon Slopes as well. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so much,
much.
Jeff.